fully human. It's fully human, 12 feet tall.
Did it have? Okay, so you're saying it was 12 feet tall? What?
Yes.
12 feet tall? I think we'll have Matt. Matt's going to do the research on this.
I think you've been getting your information from very unreliable sources. I recall pictures of guys excavating giant skeletons, and those pictures have been demonstrated to be fakes. You know,
what was the one in England, the famous one in England that was a statue?
Things like Ramesses and all those guys, haven't they proven to be fake too? And also the other
No.
quote-unquote missing links?
No. First, okay, wow. Hang on. Let me backtrack a second. First of all, your conspiracy theory thing falls apart the second you realize that atheism and evolution are not tied together, and that there are tons of Christians and other religionists who accept that evolution is a fact.
Oh yeah, and I had one more comment on that.
It is a fact. It is supported by evidence, and even one of the current head of the NIH, who is the former head of the Human Genome Project, has said that even if there were no fossils, the DNA evidence alone would be enough to confirm common ancestry. This is an evangelical Christian who I despise for all sorts of things, and yet he is unwilling to buy into this nonsense that you're buying into because the science does not support it. And now you're talking about digging up bones of 12-foot tall. What sort of conspiracy planet do we have to live on where the discovery by anthropologists of 12-foot humans?
These are done by evolutionist anthropologists, mind you.
Name them.
What kind of conspiracy world do we have to live in where the discovery of 12-foot human remains that disprove evolution, and I'm not saying that necessarily would, but you aren't front page news everywhere? What sort of world do we have to live in for that to be the case?
Yeah, the world gradually has to be better physically in terms of the air that we breathe, because the oxygen content has also gone down. So it cannot support bigger life forms because of the oxygen content. Because what I'm saying that this supports it, if someone who believes in the Bible, where Genesis 6 says that there were giants in the earth,
you missed something very important a minute ago. And that is when I said that you can find things that are consistent with the Genesis account, yet they do not confirm it. In much the same way that anthropologists 1,000 years from now can dig up New York, but that doesn't confirm that there was a Spider-Man. So the fact that you might find bones of somebody doesn't mean that the biblical account of giants or Nephilim or anything else are accurate. And even if there were some grain of truth in there, none of that gets you back to the supernatural claims that are behind it. This is not the way reason is done. This is not the way a rational evaluation of evidence is. You don't begin with this and see how much evidence you can find that is consistent with it.
And speaking of which, that reminds me, this is something I've wanted to say since the beginning, where you said, Christians have their evidence and atheists have their evidence, and Matt has rightly pointed out that atheism and evolution are two different things, and that there are believers that accept the scientific findings of evolution. But not only that, atheists don't need evidence. There is one group that needs to meet the burden of proof, and that's those. Wow. There it is. I disappeared for a second.
I don't think that's the 12-foot one, because that looks almost 40 feet.
And that is the group that postulates, that makes the initial claim. The initial claim is there's a God. Now, it doesn't matter what atheists say after that. It doesn't matter what evidence we do or do not come up with. The burden of proof is on the believers to show that their claim is true. And the reason we're atheists is not because we think we can prove that your God doesn't exist. It's because you folks haven't proved that he does. So all this stuff, wow, yeah, the things that you're bringing up are like crazy conspiracy theory, lunatic fringe, anti-evolution stuff.
It reminds
you
me.
really need to. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
You really need to, check to see whether the sources you're getting this from are considered legitimate at all, other than by other believers like yourself who just desperately want this to be true.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me a little bit of like the Paluxy tracks, where somebody is convinced that they have found fossilized human and dinosaur tracks together, thereby, right there in concrete, we have proof that man and dinosaur lived and walked at the same time. And those tracks are simply not what the believers claim they are. And no, because they are, instead of following where the evidence leads, they are leading the evidence to the conclusion that they want to accept. It doesn't matter how many times scientists point out to these guys that no, that's not actually true. They're just not going to believe it. And so it lives on, especially on creationist sites on the internet. The first thing is, as much as I hate recommending creationist sites, if you go to, I believe it's Answers in Genesis, that has a list of arguments that they think creationists should not use, they're at least trying to eliminate some of the dumber arguments, like about moon dust and other things like that. I'd recommend that as a starting point. And then when you're done reading that, go to Talk Origins and read the other arguments. There's an index of creationist claims there, and it's everything from what you were talking about here to the giants. The information is available. I don't know for a second if it would convince you, because you're of a mindset that this evidence that confirms your beliefs is credible, and the scientists won't accept it because they have some sort of agenda to push. And that's not only is it wrong when you consider the fact that there are many believers who accept evolution, but it's also wrong from the standpoint of how science actually works. If in fact there was scientific evidence for the biblical account, every scientist would be all over that, because first of all, it's Nobel Prize material. You're going to be rich. You're going to have grants all over the place. That is a worldview altering or worldview confirming event. And to play it up as if there's some anti-creation science thing that has taken over the world and won't let the truth come out, it puts you in the tinfoil hat group.
So, I mean, what is the center of evolution anyway?
What do you mean?
The first thing I've heard of in evolution is the Big Bang Theory.
That's not part of evolution.
Can that be proven?
The Big Bang has nothing to do with evolution.
Evolution, the theory of evolution by natural selection begins after life formed. It has nothing to do with universal origins, and it is only loosely tied to abiogenesis in the fact that we need some explanation for how life formed in the first place. Evolution deals with how creatures evolve over time.
Okay. And I will admit to you that I have not even really scratched the surface of studying evolution. But, that's why I'm asking, what is the real center of it all? What does it wholly stand upon?
Evidence?
Yeah, I mean, no, not just evidence, but what was the initial thing that started the study of evolution really and truly?
The observation of the diversity of life and an attempt to come up with an explanation for it. And the evidence continued to point in the direction that small changes over vast periods of time can account for the diversity of life on the planet.
Right, and, the thing about it is, do y'all guys believe in the Big Bang Theory?
Well, that's a weird phrasing, but I'll just say yes to save time.
And have you witnessed it?
No.
So
obviously.
Isn't that just accepting it without any...
No, because look, the evidence for a God, the evidence for God is like visions, and dreams and claims of divine visitation and things like that. The evidence for the Big Bang is like, carefully measured, carefully taken measurements of the natural forces in the real world.
Yeah,
The kind of evidence that supports it is completely different.